When our parents died suddenly in a car crash, I was just 19, still figuring out who I was. My older sister, Clara, stepped in as my guardian, though I was technically an adult. At first, I was grateful. She had a job, a house, and a confident way of handling everything that made me feel safe in the storm, but over the years, that safety turned into something else, something controlling, suffocating, and cruel. I worked part-time jobs and saved every dollar while she insisted I pay her back for all the support she provided. I never saw the bank account statements until it was too late. Clara had drained everything, every penny I'd managed to save, and left me with nothing but accusations that I owed her more. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was emotional. She gaslit me into believing I was selfish, ungrateful, and broken. But I wasn't. I was just waking up to the truth. This is the story of how I lost everything, then fought to take it all back. If you're watching this, tell me in the comments where you're from. And if you've ever trusted someone so completely, only to realize they were quietly dismantling your life behind your back. I hope you know you're not alone. I was 19 when our parents died. They were driving home from a weekend trip, one of those getaways they used to take when they were trying to pretend the world wasn't closing in. A drunk driver crossed the median and hit them head-on. I remember the officer's voice over the phone, too calm, too rehearsed. My knees buckled before I even registered the words. They were gone. Clara, my older sister by 7 years, stepped in immediately. She lived 2 towns over, had a steady job in HR, and a house she bought with her boyfriend at the time. She arrived the next morning with strong coffee, a plan, and a way of speaking that made everyone assume she knew best. "You'll stay with me," she said, like it was already decided. I was too numb to question it.at first. It felt like safety. I didn't know how to live without our parents, without their noisy love, their quiet reassurances, their belief that I'd eventually find my own way. Clara cooked dinner every night. She set me up with a room, gave me a list of chores, and handled the insurance claims. When people came by to offer condolences, they'd always say the same thing: "You're lucky to have such a responsible sister." And I believed them. I wanted to believe them, but that first year, it was like living in a house where the windows were always slightly too small. Clara had rules for everything. I couldn't touch the thermostat. I had to tell her where I was going, how long I'd be gone. She controlled the mail, my phone plan, even my schedule. When I mentioned wanting to go to therapy, she said, "You don't need a stranger to tell you how to grieve. You need structure." So I got a job, part-time at a bookstore, and started saving. Clara said I could keep a little for myself, but most of it would go into the family account. She said we'd both use it. That it was how adults managed things together. And again, I believed her. Because who would expect their own sister to lie? She told me I owed her that, keeping me in her house, feeding me, even putting up with my moods. None of that came free. She didn't say it all at once. It was in the little comments. The way she'd look at me when I grabbed food from the fridge without asking. "Nothing's really free, you know." Or, "Some of us actually work for what we have." But I was working too. And I was saving. At least, I thought I was. It took me 3 years to realize I didn't have a single cent to my name. I remember the day I found out I needed money to enroll in a certification course. It wasn't even expensive, just a few $100s. I logged into the online banking app we shared, one she set up for me when I first moved in. The password was still the same. And when I got in, I just stared. 0. Actually, less than 0. The account was overdrawn. That didn't make sense. I had deposited hundreds over the past few months alone. Where had it gone? At first, I thought it was a mistake. I told myself she must have used the money for bills. Maybe she forgot to tell me. Maybe she meant to pay it back. But then I opened the transaction history. She wasn't just spending. She was emptying it. Spa weekends. Uber Eats. Payments labeled as personal reimbursements. She was bleeding. It dried. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed with a phone in hand, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might throw up. I waited until she got home. I told myself I'd confront her calmly, ask for an explanation. But when I opened my mouth, all that came out was, "Why?" And she looked at me, dead in the eye, and said, "Because you owe me." That's when I realized something chilling. Clara didn't think she was stealing from me, she thought she was entitled to it, and that was only the beginning. Have you ever looked someone in the eyes and realized they were never really on your side? That they'd only been playing the role of protector until they could twist it into power, if that resonates with you. I need you to tell your story. There's something strangely healing about speaking it out loud, about not pretending anymore. After Clara told me I owed her, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I thought maybe she was joking. I waited for the smirk, for the moment she'd say, "Relax, I just needed some cash and I'll put it back next week." But she didn't. She just stood there, arms crossed, like she'd been waiting for this confrontation. "You think living here is free?" she said. "You think food, electricity, water, car insurance just falls from the sky? You've been freeloading off me for years, and now you want to complain about a few dollars missing?" I felt something crack in my chest. Freeloading? I paid every month. I took care of the cleaning, the errands, even watched her dog when she went on weekends away. I kept quiet when she screamed at her boyfriends, when she vented about work, when she called me emotionally high maintenance. I was saving, I said, my voice thin and dry. That money was mine. For school. For my future. She scoffed. "Your future is only possible because I gave you a roof. If you don't like it, there's the door." That sentence didn't just hurt, it made me question everything. Was she right? Was I just a burden in her eyes? Had I been taking advantage of her generosity without realizing it? That's the thing about emotional abuse, it doesn't start with punches. It starts with doubt. It starts with someone convincing you that your needs are too much. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the times Clara had brushed off my boundaries. The way she'd open my mail without asking. The way she'd borrow my debit card for gas and never return it. The way she'd talk over me in conversations, laugh at my ambitions, call me overly sensitive when I tried to set limits. But this wasn't just about money. It was about something deeper, something older. When we were kids, Clara had always been the golden child. Our parents trusted her to babysit me, to help with chores, to set an example. But I remember how she used that role. How she'd lie to them about things I said. How she'd take credit for things I did. How she'd pinch me hard behind closed doors and then act like the perfect big sister in front of everyone else. And now, here we were again. Different stage. Same ACT. In the days that followed, I tried to reason with her. I printed out bank statements, highlighted withdrawals, tried to explain how much I'd contributed. She refused to look. "You're being dramatic," she said. "This is what families do, they support each other. Maybe if you were more grateful, you wouldn't be so angry all the time." I started looking for a way out. I applied for second jobs, reached out to friends I hadn't spoken to in years. Asked about rooms for rent. But I kept hitting walls. My credit was bad. Clara had used my name for utilities without telling me. I had no savings. No support system. She made sure of that point one night. While she was out, I opened her filing cabinet. I know how that sounds. But I was desperate. I needed to know if there was more. And there was, in a folder labeled Household Budget. I found spreadsheets, detailed, color-coded, calculating down to the cent how much I owed her. Rent. Groceries. Internet. Even toilet paper. She had logged everything I'd ever used. And then I saw it, at the bottom of the page, a line item in bold, emotional labor, $500/month, she was charging me to exist. I sat there, staring at that absurd line, and something inside me shifted. I wasn't angry anymore. I was cold. Calm. Focused. For the first time in years, I saw her clearly, not as a sister, but as someone who had built a system where my survival depended on my silence, and I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. What would you have done in that moment? Because here's what I did: I started planning my escape, but then I found something even worse, and that's when everything changed. There's something nauseating about realizing your life has been turned into a transaction, 4 days after finding that spreadsheet, Clara's little ledger of my existence. I couldn't look at her the same way. Every time she smiled, every time she asked if I'd washed the dishes or reminded me to text when I get there, I saw the number in my head: $500 a month for emotional labor. As if my grief, my presence, my vulnerability had been just another item in her monthly budget, and still, I didn't leave. Not yet, because when someone breaks you slowly, you stop trusting your own urgency. You wait for proof that what you're feeling is real. You second-guess the fire in your gut.so. I waited. I smiled back. I cleaned. I worked. I watched her and I planned. One afternoon, I told her I was going to the library. Instead, I went to a small legal aid office downtown. They offered free consultations for people in financial or domestic crisis. I sat across from a tired-looking woman with kind eyes and told her everything. The bank account. The fake debts. The emotional manipulation. The credit cards in my name. She didn't blink. "You're not the first sibling I've seen walk in here with this story," she said. "What you're describing isn't just exploitation. It borders on financial abuse." I don't know why, but hearing those words, financial abuse, shook me. Like I finally had a name for the thing that had been poisoning me for years. I wasn't being ungrateful. I wasn't confused. I was being controlled. I left that office with a folder of resources and a new fire in my chest. That night, I cooked dinner like normal. Clara came home late, smelled like wine and entitlement, and flopped onto the couch without saying a word. I watched her scroll through her phone and laugh at something on Instagram. I watched her exist like a queen in a castle I was paying to maintain, and then, as I cleared the dishes, I saw her purse lying half open on the table. I hadn't planned to look. But my fingers moved faster than my doubt. Inside, wedged between receipts and old lipsticks, was a sealed envelope with my name on it. Not written. Printed. Neatly. Like it had been prepared for something official. My throat tightened. I took it to my room and locked the door. My hands trembled as I slid my finger under the flap and pulled out a stack of papers. At first, they didn't make sense. They were contracts, printed emails, account applications. And then I saw it, my name, attached to accounts I'd never opened. Credit cards with balances in the thousands. A personal loan from a credit union I'd never even heard of. She hadn't just drained my savings, she'd stolen my identity. The air left my lungs. I felt the room tilt. I called the legal aid office and left a message. I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I just sat there, documents spread across the bed like pieces of a life I no longer recognized. Clara had been planning this for years. There were dated emails showing she applied for the first card only 6 months after I moved in. She had copies of my ID, my social security number, even a forged signature she'd practiced until it looked like mine. She'd built an entire financial profile under my name, destroyed it, and smiled at me through every holiday, every birthday, every fake hug. And then I saw the last page. A draft of an eviction notice, filed under her name. Addressed to me. She was preparing to throw me out. After everything. After draining me dry, she wanted me gone, but she didn't know I had the papers now. She didn't know I had proof The next morning, I packed a small bag and walked out the front door as if I were going to work. But I didn't go to work. I went to the police. I thought that was the beginning of justice, but I was wrong. It was the beginning of something much harder. They say the truth sets you free, but no one tells you that first. It isolates you. When I stepped into that police station, my hands were clammy, my heart an earthquake inside my chest. I had everything: documents, forged signatures, credit reports, even the ledger Clara had made. I thought that would be enough. I thought they'd look at the stack of papers, hear my voice shake, see the pain in my eyes, and they'd help me. Instead, the officer flipped through the folder like it was a tax audit. "This is your sister?" he asked, not looking up. "Yes. She opened accounts in my name. She drained my savings." But you lived with her?" "I did. But that doesn't mean she..." "Did you ever give her access to your information? Your social security number? Your bank login?" I paused. Because yes, I had. I didn't think I was giving it away. I thought I was trusting someone I loved. "She helped set up my accounts," I said carefully. "But I didn't authorize any of this." The officer leaned back, pen tapping against the folder. "Family cases are complicated," he said. "We'd need clear proof of intent to commit fraud. Otherwise, it's just a civil dispute." I wanted to scream. "Clear proof? What about the forged applications? The balances? The fact that I had never seen those cards, never spent that money, never received a dime, but all I got was a polite nod and a referral to a consumer protection agency. Clara had covered her tracks too well. She had kept everything in my name, used addresses we shared, made minimum payments for years to avoid red flags. And when she finally let it all implode, it looked like I was the irresponsible one. The weight of it crushed me. I didn't go back to her house. I stayed in a motel using the last few dollars in my checking account. I called every friend I could think of. Most of them hadn't heard from me in years. That's what abusers do. They isolate you slowly, make you forget you have options. Clara had built a narrative where I was dependent, fragile, difficult. And I had believed it. 2.1 friend, Maya, offered me her couch. She didn't ask questions. Just came and picked me up like I hadn't disappeared for 3 years. That first night at her place, I cried until I couldn't breathe. Not because of the money, or the fraud, or even the betrayal. But because someone had finally seen me. Spent the next few weeks rebuilding my identity, one humiliating phone call at a time. I had to freeze my credit, dispute charges, file reports, wait on hold for hours, only to be told that since the accounts were in my name, there's little we can do. I felt invisible, powerless, and through it all, Clara kept texting, "Where are you? We need to talk. You're being dramatic. I didn't do anything you didn't agree to. You're ruining our family." Each message was a blade. Twisting. Mocking. Daring me to fall apart, but I didn't, because somewhere in that storm of helplessness, I found something solid: rage. Not the kind that burns out. The kind that builds. The kind that turns silence into strategy. I stopped responding. I stopped explaining myself. I started documenting everything. I opened a new bank account, in a different state. I started working with a pro bono attorney who specialized in financial abuse. I wrote down every memory, every detail I could recall, because I knew there would be a day when the facts would matter more than my feelings. Then, one morning, a letter arrived at Maya's apartment. It was from Clara. A cease and desist. She was accusing me of harassment, of defamation. She said I was spreading lies about her. Threatened to sue if I didn't drop this crusade. I stared at the paper. It felt like a joke until I flipped to the second page. She had hired a lawyer. She was preparing to take me to court, and I knew, if I didn't fight back now, really fight, she wouldn't just steal my money, she'd steal my story. There's a moment, after you've been shattered, when you stop trying to go back, you realize that the life you had, the trust you gave, the silence you kept, the family you thought you belonged to. It's over. And what's left is yours to rebuild. On your own terms. Clara's cease and desist letter was her final move. She believed I'd cower. That I'd fold under the threat of a courtroom the way I used to fold when she raised her voice or rolled her eyes, but she didn't know who I had become in her absence, had spent months collecting evidence. Every message. Every bank transaction. Every forged signature. I had written a 20-page timeline, attached supporting documents, and filed a formal report with a Consumer Financial Protection Office. My lawyer helped me prepare a counterclaim: fraud, identity theft, and emotional damages. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the principle. The day of the hearing, I sat across from her in a small, windowless room. Clara wore a beige suit, clean makeup, and that same forced expression she always used when pretending to be the responsible one. She looked at me like I was a problem she had outgrown. Like I was an inconvenience that should have stayed silent, but I didn't flinch. I told the judge everything. My voice trembled at first, but I kept going. I described the manipulation, the financial entrapment, the paper trail she left behind. I watched Clara's face twitch as each document was presented. Her lawyer tried to argue consent, that I had given her access, that this was a disagreement between siblings. But the evidence spoke louder. I'll never forget the moment the judge looked over his glasses and said, "This goes far beyond a family dispute. This is systemic financial abuse, and it's deeply troubling." In that moment, I felt something lift from my chest, not victory. Not yet, but validation. The court ruled in my favor. Clara was ordered to pay restitution, close all remaining accounts in my name, and undergo financial ethics counseling. She lost her job a month later. HR departments don't like employees who commit fraud, but even after all that, I didn't feel like celebrating, because the truth is, you don't walk away from years of gaslighting and betrayal with a smile, you walk away with scars. But they're yours. They don't belong to your abuser. And they don't define you. I found a small apartment of my own. A mattress on the floor, secondhand dishes, no Wi-Fi at first. But it was mine. Every decision, every dollar, every inch of space, I earned it. On my terms, I started over. Slowly, I found a therapist who didn't flinch when I said financial abuse. I built my credit back, one hard conversation at a time. I cut ties with people who said, "But she's your sister," as if biology was a shield against cruelty. And one day, months later, I got an email from someone I'd never met. They said they had seen my story in a support forum where I'd anonymously shared parts of what happened. They said my words helped them realize they were being financially controlled by their own mother. They were planning their exit. That's when I realized, this isn't just about revenge, it's about voice. About breaking the silence that abusers count on to keep thriving. Clara can't reach me anymore, not legally. Not emotionally, and even if she tried, I'm not the girl who thanked her for scraps anymore. I'm the woman who took her name back, who reclaimed her life. And if you're listening, feeling that tightness in your chest, wondering if what you're going through is real, I'm telling you it is. You are not crazy. You are not selfish. You are not alone. If this story echoes something inside you, if you've been told you're a burden, if your worth has ever been calculated in dollars, please speak. Share your truth in the comments. Let's make this section a place where silence dies and support begins, because healing doesn't come from justice alone. It comes from knowing someone finally heard you and believed every word.